Hello, this is Rick. This is part 18 of Professor Tierlist. Just going to talk about the arts that starts the letter R. First time on this part I was going to talk about is the northern raccoon of the Twilight pack. This is one of 3 North American animals in this DLC. Despite being iconic residents of the continent that have promised captivity, a lot of people feel like they shouldn't be in the game because they be sparse and don't think they're common in zoos, even though they are. So for all the animals still seem to us back, the Northern Raccoon would have to be my favourite ones. The model would get, even if it could be made look fluff. That's the animations are. So it's just the higher parts of Scratch. So it's with the boards jets, and it's going to go I think around here do this up as the red current crane of the Watson's pack. Just like what they asked to start with the word black, the ones that start with the word red are arranged in the zoo based on whether or not they have a hyphen in the name. Still going to ask like this isn't a thing, and just start off with the red crane out of these animals. So here's ones. So this is a very good choice of the game since the red crane is one of the most well-known residents of Japan. Citing in captivity. This is another well done bird in the game, since the model is very accurate and well detailed, especially with the beak with the cavities actually being hollow. So this stands also being the only groove form in the game, so this isn't going into the excellence category. And for height will go into save it's smaller. So I think this will be where it go. Up next is the Red Deer, which is the last new base game animal for me to talk about. This is a good choice for the game since it's notable for being very widespread in the northern parts of the old world and accommodating captivity, especially in Europe. Out of all the new base game animals, this is easily my favorite one since it's accurate from the counterparts. I guess it starts with being the only deer in the base game. It's the only animal in it that's primarily found in Europe, since the great swimming is very rare, and the grey wolf which get say to one, I don't this as the European grey wolf at all, and two, I think it's probably in North America than it is to Europe. So red deer is indeed the X category. So it's going to go, I think it's more common than the case. I think here will do. Next up is the red-eyed tree frog, which is the last amphibian for me to talk about, as the last one from the South America pack for me to talk about. It's also notes being the very DLC exhibit animal, and it's a very good. It's one of the most iconic amphibians out there, and it has a decent representation in captivity. It's of all the else on the South America pack, and out of all the animals in the game, this would actually have to be my favorite one, since it's by far the most accurate out from the South practice from the counterpart. I love the coloration in it. Stars. Also like the auto crew animation So that's in the game, so it's another G for the X category, and out of all the so it's the highest ranked one for me. Go. Next is the Red Fox, which is another North American animal from the Twilight pack. However, I feel like it's more well known in Europe than it is to North America, especially since it's the large amount of the carnivores in the UK, for example. The model is good, and I do love the amount of colour variation it has. You do actually get the silver form. It's the animation that it has to offer. However, I do think it could have more variance to its appearance, since as it stands, it mainly resembles the northern plains species of all things. As according to Zootilso, isn't currently present in captivity. So this is going into the great category. It will go. But just below the racial links. There we go. Next up is the red kangaroo of the Australia pack. This is another obvious choice for the DLC. It's another iconic resident to the country, and it's a common sighting in zoos. The model is okay. It's a thing that textures could be improved upon, because the animations are great, especially since it's the small amount of hours in the game to have a natural birthing animation. Well, with most hours in the game, the baby just magically appears in front of its mother. Macropods, on the other, have the cherries come out of the pouch like they would in real life. So it's also a very versatile animal since it's a kangaroo. So this is another G for the great category. Right, we think it's versatile. So I think the hill. Goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna put just below the aardvark. Up next is the Bennett's Wallaby of the Grasslands pack. This is an art I feel like could have been in the base game. It's extremely common in captivity, and it's by far the most commonly kept marsupial captivity. In general, the Bennett's Wallaby is similar to the red kangaroo in its execution means. They're pretty much at the same posits. So this will also be going in the great category, which makes sense since they're both macropods. However, I do think it's slightly weaker than the red kangaroo. Just since it's less iconic and less unique from the game, and I do think the model is a bit weird looking, especially with the eyes. As it stands, I'm going to think, I think. I think here will do. Next up is the red panda. This is another obvious choice of the base game, since while it might be overshadowed a bit by the giant panda, it's still popular in its own right, and it's very common in zoos. So in execution, I'm not the biggest fan of the models. I wouldn't say it's bad. I'm not a fan of how chubby the face is, and the textures could be improved upon as well with this being a base game animal. So this is going into the mediocre category, where it has sort of I mean, I think it's I think that's the African wildlife. I think here will do. Up next is the red river hawk, which is the last animal from the tropical pack for me to talk about. This is a great choice. So the pack, since it's notable for its bright orange coloration, one of the most brightly coloured suidae out there, and it's a common sighting in zoos. Out of all the suidae in the game, this would have to be my favourite one, since it's very accurate to its role of counterpart, and it's also my favourite one in real life. Love the coloration that it also gets the sound out for its large amount of unique interspecies enrichment, which it has it with a lot of tropical African animals, which before then didn't have any interspecies at all. So this includes most of the, all the tropical African primates, the bongo, both hippos, and so they may think of the okapi, and some of these examples actually are seen in real life, with Frankfurt Zoo housing with bongos, Bronx Zoo houses them with mandrills, Houston Zoo houses them with western lone gorillas, and Columbus Zoo in the past did house them with bonobos, but they don't have red river hogs anymore. Now, I will say you could have some variations, but it's still going into the excellent category for how executed it is, so it would be at the lower parts of it. And I'm going to put, I think it's what, Hairy Dog. I think he will do. Actually, alright, I'm gonna put slice hole in the very box and think about the. Yeah, there we go. Next up is the red ruffed lemur. This is the ruffed lemur that I think should have been added to the base game later. This is the one that has been in the game since the very start, alongside the ring-tailed lemur, which I'll get into later in this part. The red ruffed lemur is a common sight in captivity. It's less common than the black and white ruffed lemur. Now, I do put the two ruffed lemurs at a similar level, since they're very similar in their execution of having, weak texture rings, not looking as fluffy as they should be, fully accurate. I would say I think the red ruffed lemur is slightly less accurate, so I'm going to put it just below the black and white ruffed lemur. So there's that. The next up is the reindeer, which is the last deer for me to talk about, as the last one from the Arctic pack for me to talk about as well. This is actually, ironically, not the first deer to be added to the game, which makes perfect sense. It's, I think, the most iconic for its, performance in Crusoe, so it's the owl that Toros Sire, and it's very common sight in captivity. But out of all the deer and sort of all the else in the Arctic pack, this is definitely the worst one to me. So the thing about the model, so I know a lot of people do take issue with it, anyway. And so what, to be well, so the model's meant to resemble more specifically the Svalbard species, which is the one that's found in Norway, which seems like an odd choice. It's I think, as far as I'm aware, this isn't the subspecies that's present in captivity, and most reindeer or so non-specific or domesticated. Well, I think the main subspecies definitive subspecies that you would see zoos, well, some European zoos being the European forest subspecies. But I think this might have the range to resemble the Svalbard subspecies to match the Scandinavian viewing. That's the sea new pieces in the Arctic pack have. But even then, it doesn't really do. The model doesn't really do a good job resembling the subspecies. It might have a lot less brown in its coloration. It is a mostly white subspecies. And it also doesn't really look like a standard reindeer either. It's a lot bulkier than what reindeer typically look like. Because there's very chunky reindeer. So it's going into the bad category. I think this is a bit less capable. I think here will do. And up next is the reticulated giraffe. Out of all the giraffes out there, the reticulated is the one that I think makes the most sense to be in the game, since it's one of the most distinct ones with its orange color, mostly orange coloration and reticulated pattern, and it's the most widespread one in captivity. I do think that this is another one of the better basic models, since it's surprisingly accurate to its real-life counterparts. However, I do think the tail could be improved upon, since the texturing of all is a bit poor. So, on the brushy part of it, it doesn't really look brushy, but to look brushed is brown in the game. It's meant to be black in real life. And since the bottle still for the accurate, it's going into the great category. And with how high it goes, I think it's a bit louder to play. So, later so far with the actually, it could maybe do. I think actually, it will do. And finally, this part is the ring-tailed lemur, which is the last person for me to talk about. This is another of his choice for the game, since it's the flagship animal for Madagascar, and it's the most commonly kept fight in captivity. Out of the 4 lemurs in the game, this would have to be my least favorite top, because it's a lot darker than this. I think, dark shade of grey, as you can sort of see here with this. For it, it's meant to be usually a light shade of grey, and it's going into the good categories, isn't it? This is still a reliable the game. It's the most commonly kept right after all, but I think. Where should it go? I guess here will do. Maybe the text could be a problem. Okay, not. Yeah, I suppose. But there you go. For the next parts, I'm going to move. Starts the letter S, which there's a lot. There's even more animals for me to talk about. But the next part will actually be the last lengthy part of the series. So getting close to the end of it. So we'll have next.